topic this morning, and we're going to be talking a little bit about, and this is more of a Sarbat Tabala topic, but I thought we would try and connect two important events, and one is Black Lives Matter. So for you kids, what does it mean and why do we talk about it? And 1984, which this is the anniversary of. Let's talk. So this is an example of people in this day and age. This is taken in the last 2 weeks, who are outraged and who are standing up against something that's happening in our society. And we've dubbed it as Black Lives Matter because it's targeted the Black community in particular. And so what does it mean? What is this Black Lives Matter? Why do we care and why should we care? So Black Lives Matter is a slogan. It's a way of saying something, right? It's oftentimes on social media, it's seen as a hashtag, and it's a statement, right? Black Lives Matter, right? So it's not a new movement. It's been around now for several years. It started in the 2012, 2013 timeframe, right? So it's been around now for several years, almost 8 years now. But it speaks out against police brutality and racism, okay? So sometimes, unfortunately, even though the police are there to help us, sometimes things go a little too far. And this aggressiveness has been unfortunately targeted against the Black community, so that many bad things, violent incidents have happened to Black people that aren't either reported, recorded, or no one knows about because of the fact that many things happen without going to the newspapers and the like. But in recent times, this has been something that has been in the news. And, you've heard people talking about it, and I'm sure kids have heard their parents talking about it. And if they haven't heard their parents talking about it, I implore the parents to talk about it with your kids at all levels, okay? So Black people are twice as likely to be killed by a police officer while unarmed compared to someone who's not Black, okay? So specifically someone who's white. So that's a pretty big fact, right? So if you're twice as likely. According to a 2015 study, so a 5-year-old study, African Americans, so Blacks, died at the hands of police at a rate that was more than double that of the white population, 7.2 to 2.9. So that's a big differential, okay? So many people, when they hear Black Lives Matter, some people say, well, don't all lives matter? Why do we say Black Lives Matter? And I like these examples that I think just highlight why we say Black Lives Matter. If you break your arm and go to the doctor, I say this as a physician, and the doctor says, that's nice that you broke your arm, but all your bones matter, not just your arms. You're going to look at that doctor as though they have two heads because you've got a broken arm. So yes, the rest of your bones matter, but your arm is what needs attention right now. Okay, does that make sense? So think of Black Lives Matter as the broken arm of your body, all right? So that's why we're saying Black Lives Matter. It's not that all lives don't matter, but the Black lives in particular right now are hurting. So if someone keeps setting your house on fire, wouldn't you want the firefighters to come and do something about it? Would it upset you if someone said, all houses matter when yours is the one on fire, right? Don't you think that you would want the firefighters to put out your fire, to save your house, to help you, right? And you would be upset and frankly offended if someone else said, all houses matter, when the other houses aren't the ones on fire, yours is. And yours is the one that needs attention. So that's why when you hear Black Lives Matter, we should never respond by saying all lives matter, okay? Because it's insulting and it's something that is, a phrase that is disrespectful to those in need and to those who are suffering right now. So there's been someone in the news in particular that's kind of galvanized, that's kind of taken on this new energy that we've had, that spurred a lot of these protests and this movement that you've seen in your communities. So his name is George Floyd, and 8 minutes and 46 seconds is the time frame that was determined that a police officer, while trying to contain George, while trying to hold him down, it's how long the police officer had his knee on his neck, which was causing him to not be able to breathe. So George Floyd ultimately did die, okay, in police custody while the police were trying to basically control him. And the point is that they didn't have to do it the way they did it, right? So there's a more humane way of treating someone who's a fellow human being. And that's the point of this, that we all have to treat each others as fellow human beings, right? So this is not a country of white, black, brown, yellow, etc. This is not a world of, Americans, Italians, Portuguese, Chinese. This is a world of humans, okay? We are earthlings, if you will, okay? We are part of one planet, and we all have to treat one another as brothers and sisters, okay? So, and that's the point of this, that George Floyd was not treated as a fellow human being. He was treated very poorly, more like someone who is subhuman, okay? Someone who's not even equal to us. So there have been several people in the news as of late, and I'm just going to quickly go through just some news headlines that have shown you guys that this is not just a one-person thing. And this movement started after 2012 and included many other people, okay? Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, and Breonna Taylor. Most recently, this is of 2020, and there are many more. So, this is an old slide, but just to remind you that there is in New York City, so right in our backyard and a place where many of you live, there is a burial ground that is actually present, that is believed to be the largest African colonial cemetery for free and enslaved Africans. In other words, there's a burial ground for slaves in New York City. And at one point, there might have been 20,000 slaves buried there. It's in the middle of New York City, okay? So, I mean, it's just something that if you guys ever get an opportunity to see and to visit, that is a national monument, okay? To show that the sacrifices of the Black community go back hundreds of years, and they were suffering at the hands of those who were deemed higher than them, right? Guru Nanak says, Uttam Neech Na Koi, right? So that no one is high, no one is low, we're all equal, right? So the Blacks were not considered equal. They were considered to be below everyone else. So Rodney King is a name that many of you might have heard. In 1992, he was beaten in police custody, and the police were taken to court, but ultimately did not get convicted. So the police were let go, which caused tremendous riots and protests. Trayvon Martin was a young man who was shot by a man named George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman was not convicted for what he did. So Trayvon was a young Black man who walked around in a hoodie, and so George Zimmerman thought that he was a criminal just because of the way he looked. That's it, strictly on the basis of his look, and as a result, killed him. He was unarmed. He didn't even have a weapon. Didn't have a chance to defend himself. And this is when the term Black Lives Matter started. So it was in 2013, okay, within a year of Trayvon Martin's murder, okay? So, and it's obviously grown tremendously, not just in the United States, but elsewhere as well. And now I'm just gonna go through some random headlines of those affected, Black individuals who were affected by police brutality, those who were either killed or hurt during their time in the hands of the police. So Gabriel Windsor. So Eric Garner was another one who was choked. Another, right now you heard of people say, I can't breathe, because the knee that was on the neck of George Floyd was similarly causing him to not be able to breathe, in the same way that Eric Garner, who was in a chokehold and had asthma, couldn't breathe. And he ultimately also died in the chokehold of a police officer. And that's where this first came about. So, and many protests that are happening these days are happening in a way that is remembering what the people who died, how they suffered. And it's a way of connecting us to their suffering so that we feel their pain and so that we actually want to do something about them. Michael Brown, also killed in the hands of police. Tamir Rice, also killed in the hands of police. This was a 12-year-old boy. There are many of you who are 12 and younger out there. This boy was playing with a fake gun in a playground, so not in a dangerous location, and he had a toy gun. And a police officer came and shot him dead. Rikia Boyd and Sandra Bland, okay, again, also killed in police custody. Freddie Gray, another young black man, died from injuries of spinal cord trauma when he was in police custody in Baltimore. No one got convicted. Alton Sterling, age 37, shot while he was on the ground, only being arrested because he was selling CDs on a street corner. Philando Castile, another police officer, pulled over. He was simply carrying a gun that he was allowed to carry. He had a license to carry. He went to go get his wallet out of his pocket, and the police officer thought he was reaching for a gun and killed him dead. Again, it's because of his skin color that he was assumed that he was going to do something bad, right? In the same way that someone looks at one of us and says, what's that on your head? Or, that brown skin of yours means that you're from somewhere else, which must mean that you think differently, or that you have some other thing in mind other than the well-being of the country that you're living in. So people judge others based on how they appear, and in this case, the color of their skin. Colin Kaepernick, which is the former football player, quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers in the fall of 2016, really made a big statement. Instead of standing and putting his hand over his heart when the national anthem was being sung before a game, he protested silently by taking a knee, by going down on a knee, saying that I disagree with what's going on in this country. He believes in the ideals of the national anthem, but thought that the country wasn't following them, right? He didn't have anything negative to say about the United States. He was simply saying that the United States and the way that we're acting in this country wasn't consistent with what the national anthem said, that this is the home of the free and the land of the brave, that people weren't free. When people are being killed by their skin color, as a result of their skin color, you are not free. And so he was protesting that, okay? So, and that's his right to protest, because that's exactly what all of us are doing as we're attending these. Laquan McDonald, another 17-year-old who was killed 16 shots, which was obviously excessive, didn't require that. And then in 2020, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, all killed largely due to the color of their skin. So most of the protests that you hear about and see about are happening as we speak. Many of you I know have gone to these protests. We went yesterday, even in our small town. We live in Warwick, New York, and it's not a big town, but there were several hundred people that were present. And, I'll show you even a picture of that that I took. So this is a widespread stand up against injustice is what we're doing, right? We're standing up against people who are being oppressed, which means that they're being put down. They are being treated negatively based on who they are, okay? Based on the fact that they are their color of their skin. That's primarily what these protests are about. But I want to connect this to our history in the Sikh month, okay? So this is something that is happening at the same time as we're remembering what happened during 1984 when our month was attacked. So this is something that happened 36 years ago, all right? In 1984, it was on the radar of just us primarily. We were the ones who were outraged, but not many others were, okay? And it's a different time back then. Social media wasn't present, right? You didn't have Twitter, Instagram, where you could immediately flash pictures of what was going on across the world in a moment, right? So, but we were very upset at the fact that our people and our institutions, our Gurdwara, our Harmandir Sahib, and Akal Takht were disrespected and were basically destroyed And so we stood up and said, we must not allow this to happen. So as a result of our standing up for ourselves, no one else is going to stand up alongside with us if we don't help others stand up against their injustice, right? So we have our own issues, but you can't expect others to stand with you if you don't stand with them, right? So if you guys see someone who's got black skin who's being bullied, or someone who has got brown skin who's being bullied, or someone who's simply being treated differently based on their color or how they look, it is our job as the followers of Guru Gobind Singh and Guru Nanak to stand up and say something. Silence means that you're okay with what's going on, okay? And we cannot be silent, okay? We all need to take a stand against racism, and we have to look at ourselves as well to ensure that we aren't part of the problem, okay? To make sure that we don't reflect any negativity towards others based on anything about who they are, whether it's their gender, whether it's their sexual orientation, whether it's their skin color, it doesn't matter. Everyone must be treated equally, okay? So, Aval Allah, Nur Upaya, Kudrat ke Sab Bande, right? So Guru Sahib is telling us that that same light is in all, okay? That light of Vaheguru is in everyone. So everyone must be treated equally. So in June of 1984, the Punjab was at this point largely under governmental control. In 1947, India was split, okay, into Pakistan and India. And the Punjab was right on the border. So half of Punjab went to Pakistan, the other half went to India. And the Sikhs were right in the middle because they had places on both sides, right? Where Guru Nanak Sahib walked, Nankana Sahib, that was located in the Punjab, okay? But that's now in Pakistan, right? So where Guru Nanak traveled was largely in current day Pakistan, but that was then split off from India, and it's now part of a different country, which we no longer have as much access to. So the Sikh community hasn't been well taken care of in the Punjab. And as a result, after 1947, the Sikhs started to stand up and say that we need our own rights. We need proper rights, in the Punjab. Farmers weren't getting enough water for their crops. Many things were going on that were treating the Sikhs as second-class citizens, okay? So these tensions rose to a point where Prime Minister Indira Gandhi launched this thing called Operation Bluestar. And what she did is she said that the leaders of the Sikhs are terrorists. That's what she called them. And they're sitting in what they called the Golden Temple, right? Which we call Harmandir Sahib. And they needed to be removed by force is what they determined. So they took in tanks, machine guns, and bazookas, big things that caused a lot of destruction. And they went into the calm waters of the Sarovar of Guru Arjan, Guru Ramdas, and the Akal Takht of Guru Har Gobind. They chose the Gurpurb of Guru Arjan's Shahidi. This wasn't just any weekend. This was not just any time frame. This was June 3rd. It was a time where thousands and thousands of people would come to remember the sacrifice of Guru Arjan. Regular Sangat was in there, and they did not allow them to leave. This was planned for years before this happened, along with even the British's assistance, the British people's assistance. The government of Britain helped Indira Gandhi plan this. And at the same time, over 40 other Gurdwaras in Punjab were attacked during this week of June of 1984. This first week of June is when this all happened. So there was a man who was leading the Sikh Panth by the name of Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, who was a Gursikh. And he was a Gursikh who took on a defensive posture because he had to. This was not just some random person. Sant Jarnail Singh was a Sikh of Guru Nanak, and a Sikh of Guru Gobind Singh. He had memorized the Guru Granth Sahib. Memorized the Guru Granth Sahib, not just one Shabad, not just Japji Sahib, not just his Nitnem, but memorized the entire 1430 Angs of Guru Sahib. He was the head of Damdami Taksal, which is it's an organization within the Panth that is designed to teach about Sikhi. That's what it is. So his life was devoted to teaching about Sikhi and to live Sikhi. He led Amrit Sanchar to help others receive Amrit throughout Punjab in the years prior to 1984. He begged others to give up alcohol and to give up other things that were anti-Sikh. Some people say that he allowed for and led to and inspired more people to receive Amrit during this time since the 1800s. So in other words, more people adopted Sikhi during this time in the 1980s and 70s since the 1800s. That's how inspiring this process was for many. He walked the path of Sikhi. There was a story where a Hindu bride came to him one day, and this Hindu bride, in the Hindu system in India in general, this thing called a dowry is still present. So when a woman gets married to a man, the woman's family, okay, listen, all you girls in particular, please listen. The girl's family has to give a large amount of money or things to the boy's family. Otherwise, the boy's family won't allow them to get married. So it's like the girl's family has to pay the boy's family to take her as a bride, to take her as a daughter-in-law. How disrespectful is that for a girl, for a woman, right? That's not equality, right? That's treating a woman as a piece of property. That's treating a girl as just something that's inferior or less important than a man or a boy. Okay, Guru Nanak's taught us that women and men, girls and boys are equal. There is no difference in terms of how one should be treated compared to how another should be treated. And this Hindu bride came to Sant Jarnail Singh and said, my in-laws are demanding money and property from my parents. Otherwise, they won't allow us to live together. And now they are going to my parents and they're threatening them. And they're saying that if you don't give us money and things, then we will hurt your daughter and we will not allow them to be married with our son. So she went to Sant Jarnail Singh in search of help because no one was helping her. And his response to her, this non-Sikh woman, she was a woman in need. His response to her was to say, Bache, go back to your in-laws and tell them you have a new father. And his name is Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. And you ask them to come to me to ask for whatever they're asking for, whatever money and properties they want, you tell them to come to me to do so. And that's what she did. And they never said a word again. So he was there to help those in need in the same way that we are trying to help others in need. Okay, so Sant Jarnail Singh was a Gursikh that led others towards Sikhi, and he was the one who was branded as a terrorist. So those who surrounded him, so think about this. On May 25th, a full week before Operation Bluestar started, 100,000 army troops were deployed all throughout the Punjab, okay, including at Harmandir Sahib. So 100,000 members of the army were in the Punjab ready to attack all of our gurdwaras. On Friday, June 1st is when this started, the attack, because that's when the first gunfire first rang. This is also when the people within were trapped within the Parikrama. So people couldn't leave at this point. So on June 3rd, on the day of the Gurpurab, there was what's called curfew, which means that no one was allowed to leave. No one was allowed to escape the area of Harmandir Sahib. And there were as many as 10,000 people inside where Harmandir Sahib was located. All the reporters were cut off. Phone lines were stopped, so no one could pick up the phone and call their loved ones. Roadblocks were put in place, so people couldn't escape. This was a trap by the Indian government on the Sikhs. On Monday, June 4th, there was more gunfire, and now tanks were being taken in to the Patkarma. Tanks. Where we walk with no shoes, they brought tanks to the land where our gurus walked. Guru Ramdas, Guru Arjan, and Guru Hargobind walked this very place. And this is where they brought tanks. And they opened up and they destroyed a large part of our history. 6 or more tanks were present. And the marble that we walk on so delicately and that we clean, with water and milk to maintain a certain degree of cleanliness, they walked in with their army shoes, and they walked in with their tanks and equipment and high explosives. And they destroyed the Akal Takht, which is where Sant Jarnail Singh was located, and his body and others were discovered in the basement of the Akal Takht. This is a picture of what the Akal Takht looked like afterwards. These are soldiers that are posing in front of it. So this is the destruction of what happened as a result of the army's invasion of our gurus' structures. This was created by Guru Hargobind, right? This was one of our quiz questions today. The Akal Takht was created by Guru Hargobind, and this is what the Indian Army did to it. This was a painting, a mural that was drawn in the 1700s of our gurus that was inside the Akal Takht that's no longer. This has been destroyed. This is a picture of a tank inside, 2 tanks inside our Harmandir Sahib complex. We'll never know the exact number of lives that were lost in this. The army, the Indian Army, refused to let the Red Cross, which is an organization that's designed to help others, wanted to come and help. And the Indian Army said, no, thank you, because they didn't want anyone to know how many people they killed. So they took the dead bodies and they cremated them. They dumped them into the Sarovar that we consider to be something that's holy, that people come and bathe in to receive the gifts of the Guru's, Amrit, to receive the gifts of the Guru's Bani. And unfortunately, they couldn't even prevent others who wanted to do the right thing. The sweepers who cleared the streets wanted to do something and report what was going on, but they gave them alcohol. The Indian Army gave them alcohol and said, here's a gift of alcohol, go take these bodies away, dispose of them. And as a reward for not telling anyone else what we're doing, you can, any valuables, watches, money, anything that you find on these dead bodies, you can keep. So they piled the dead into garbage trucks and they cremated them. Family members were not allowed by the army to find their loved ones' remains or even allow them to perform a proper funeral. Thousands of people died as a result in June of 1984. And today, June 7th, would have been the last day of the attack on Harmandir Sahib and the Akal Takht. Amongst these terrorists that they labeled, 22 of them were kids between the ages of 2 and 16 that were kept in a jail for over a year. So this was not anyone who had, how we just said that people are treating the blacks as though they're subhuman. This is how the Sikhs were treated by the Indian Army. Subhuman, okay, not worthy of any respect. 300 bullet holes were located in Harmandir Sahib that was created by Guru Arjan. The Akal Takht was destroyed in such a way that you couldn't live in it, you couldn't go in it, you couldn't have any interaction with it because it was a building that was ready to collapse. Pothis of Guru Granth Sahib and Gutkas were found to have bullet holes within them. These same Bani, these pages of Bani that we treat with such respect, we wash our hands before we touch, had bullet holes inside them. They sealed off Punjab and then had the audacity, they had the guts to say to the world that only 308 people died, when in fact, thousands and thousands of people died in this, but we'll never know the number because they cremated. They put the dead in garbage trucks and burnt all the bodies, so they left no evidence. So this is the Indian government that did this. And this is something that we as a community can never forget. Okay, so it's just something that we all must always remember. And after this happened, the Indian government didn't want anyone to cause any trouble. So they continued to go around and pick up young Sikhs who looked like they might cause trouble. And when I say that, it means that you looked like you were able-bodied and could speak up against injustice. And they would do these things called fake encounters. So they would pick them up, take them to the police station, they would torture them and then kill them. That's how young Sikhs, including boys and girls, were treated. So mostly boys. But this is how the Punjab police treated them. And this is a Sikh who's saying this, that this is how guilty individuals were killed, but innocent young men were also killed by people who also were of the Sikh Panth. So these people were doing something to their own. So the Sikhs were trying to be extinguished. They were trying to be eliminated from this planet. These are Indian soldiers that are looking for Sikhs so they can shoot them. I mean, this was everywhere. So we cannot remain silent about things that happen to us and to others. When there's injustice against one, there's injustice against all, okay? So this is not someone else's problem. This is something that we all have to speak up against. So this is just a brief clip from our protest that we were at yesterday. So you can hear everyone saying, I can't breathe, to try and connect to the pain and suffering of George Floyd, who was recently killed. And there are people from all races that are here supporting the fact that George Floyd was killed in a subhuman way. He was not treated, he was not given the respect to be treated as a human being. And that's why everyone is out there enforced together. And this is happening in many places across the country. And I know that many of us are participating in this. But protesting is not enough. It's great to get out there and it feels good and it looks good. But we have to say something. We must talk, act, and never stay silent. When something is happening, it has to come from us. We as individuals will make a difference if we each play our part. So if you see something that someone else is doing that's treating someone else as not an equal, as someone who's less than they are, based on anything, color of their skin, gender, doesn't matter, then we must say something. We must speak. Change must start with each one of us, with you, okay? I'm gonna ask you guys to go ahead and repeat this, okay? Because this is one of the chants that many of the protests are saying. And I want everyone to say this with me, okay? I'm gonna recite, I'm gonna say it first, you recite it second, okay? So all kids, I want you to say this, okay? You ready? I am the revolution.
The revolution.
I am the change.
The change.
I am
I am
the revolution.
the revolution.
I am the change.
The change.
I am
I am
the revolution.
the revolution.
I am
I am
the change.
the change.
So this has to start with us. The gurus gave us the gift of strength that we get from our Bani. Our Gurbani gives us the strength to stand up and help others who can't protect themselves do so. I want everyone to remember that freedom is the right. Everyone, it's a basic right, okay? Because all must fight for. Although it's considered a right, that means that you don't have to fight for it, but this has to be fought for. And when others aren't being given that right, that we have to stand up and say something. So this was from the Transformers, from you guys who know the Transformers, Optimus Prime, freedom is the right of all sentient beings. I saw this on one of the placards at one of the protests. So something that we all have to connect to and remember. We cannot remain silent. This morning, Hansdeep Singh, father of Asthir Nurkaur and Jodhveer Singh, one of our Sangat members, he's the co-founder and the legal innovator of something called the International Center for Advocates Against Discrimination. I'm just going to share with you what he had sent me. So there are ways to become active. There are ways to find a way to help others. And this is just a resource kit that he had sent along that I will forward out to everyone. So say something, teaching your children about Black history, Fair of the Free Child, parenting lessons, the conscious kid, how to make our kids aware of what's going on these days, the Black freedom movement, who gets to be afraid in America, toward a racially just workplace, how to make this moment the turning point for real change. There are ways for us to become more active, and there are ways for us to do things. We just have to take that one step in the same way that Glenrock said, you know what? We have a kitchen that the Department of Health has approved to help others. Let's just start a little bit, doing just a little, and boom, it exploded into hundreds and hundreds of people being helped. If you guys say, okay, I'm going to go out and just help one person, one community, I'm going to do one thing, no matter how small, you don't know how big that's going to get. You don't know how the guru will come to your side and help you take that to another level. So with that, I think I'm going to finish. I don't think I had any screens left to share. So I'm going to end there, and we're going to go ahead and start our classes.